So click recording here. All right, good afternoon, AP Gov. We're going to be looking at Chapter 15, Interest Groups, the FRQ prompt for today, and kind of go through the grading and maybe some things to look at. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And move myself down here. So a couple things first before we get into that. If we look at the free response question, question number one is that concept application or concept scenario. Sorry, just trying to keep my eye on things here. Again, you're given a scenario question, and you're supposed to be able to make kind of connections back and forth there to, it's going to give you a scenario, you need to tie it back. So let's just dive right into it. So here was the question that we looked at for Chapter 15. So the prompt says the National Association of Home Builders, a national interest group that represents over 140,000 members in the home construction industry, has endorsed David Vallado, Republican, for re-election in California's 21st Congressional District in the 2018 midterm election. Representative Vallado has made housing and home ownership a top priority and understands that expanding housing opportunities for all Americans is essential to the economic and social well-being of our nation, said Randy Knoll, chairman of the National Association of Home Builders. We are proud to endorse him for re-election in November because he helped shepherd the landmark tax reform bill through Congress that will put more money into the pockets of hardworking families, reduce the tax burden for small businesses, and promote job and economic growth, Knoll said. Recent polls show Vallado holding an 11-point lead over the Democratic challenger, TJ Cox. And that comes from the Hanford, California Sentinel, their newspaper, about him picking up endorsements. So that's the scenario. It's setting the stage for what the question is going to ask you. Sorry. So part A says, describe an action being taken by the National Association of Home Builders in this scenario. So the first thing you want to look at is that verb right here, describe. So you want to be able to tell the reader what is an action that this interest group, the National Association of Home Builders, is doing. So there's really, in my opinion, one answer here that can give you this point, because remember, those FRQ number ones are worth 3 points total. And the answer that you would be wanting to look for, okay, the National Association of Home Builders, an interest group, okay, so what interests do they represent? Those are people that work in building new houses, okay, and building new homes. So all these new developments that we see around here are going to be, represented by the National Association of Home Builders. So what is the action that they are taking? The action that they are taking, okay, is endorsing this guy for re-election. So the action being taken by the National Association of Home Builders, what action are they doing? They're endorsing a candidate for office. So for all 140,000 members, okay, in the home construction industry, they are saying, okay, if you are in California and you vote, we would support this person. So if you're a voter in California, specifically in the 21st Congressional District, this is the guy that you should vote for. Does that make sense? Okay, so that would be 1 point. 1 point would be what's the action that they're taking? The action they're taking is endorsing a candidate. Olivia, do we have to explain what endorsing means? I would say you don't have to. It can't hurt. You have 20 minutes to answer these questions typically. So I think for this one especially, it can't hurt to say, the National Association of Home Builders, an interest group representing, you know, workers in the home construction industry, are being told that they should be supporting this particular candidate for office. And if they are a voter in the 21st district, to vote for them. That's just kind of hedging your bets and covering everything. What's the difference between lobbying and endorsing? So lobbying would be when they, well, in this instance, when they're looking at the lobbying, you know, we're proud to endorse Representative Volato for re-election because he helped move forward this tax reform bill. Lobbying would be them going to meet with him.
I can't pause this.
What's up? Somebody unmuted themselves. Okay. The idea that lobbying would be them going and meeting with him when he's in office to say, hey, here's this new, you know, tax reform bill. Here's how we think you should vote. So endorsing is telling the public to vote for this guy, whereas lobbying is going and working with the representative or the elected official to get policy passed, laws, things like that. Would you get the point if you described endorsing as part of participating in an iron triangle? Well, in this instance, we're not looking for an iron triangle because this is not, I mean, it's an interest group, but there's not a congressional committee or a bureaucratic agency at this point that they're looking for. I mean, you could make that, but basically, I think in this instance, the correct answer for part A that you're looking for is, what is the interest group doing? They're endorsing someone for office. They're telling voters to vote for this person. Does that answer questions? Good questions, guys. Love it. This is way more interesting. So let's look at part B, and because part B is going to tie it into part A. So explain how the action endorsing a candidate for office in part A affects policy making in Congress. Okay, so then this is what we're going to be looking at, these two things in here. So we know that they're endorsing, so that's the action being taken. So how does that action affect policymaking? So what we're looking at is the lawmaking and how it helps that interest group. So if I'm a member of the National Association of Home Builders, I want to see more homes being built, more new homes, more developments, more of these neighborhoods that you see the signs that's starting at the 400,000s. Like, that's what these home builders are doing, is they want more new home construction. So how does that affect policymaking? Okay, you're seeing right here in this quote, he has made housing and home ownership a top priority and understands that expanding housing opportunity, so expanding housing opportunity means building more houses, okay, is essential to economic and the social well-being of our nation. So how does endorsing him affect policymaking? Well, the policy being, well, we want to have as many homes being built out there for people to be able to buy. That's good for the economy because it's, you know, puts money into the economy for new homes being built. You're paying the guys that are building the homes. You're paying the guys on the utility lines to run sewer and gas and electric and all of the cable and everything. You're running, you know, the landscapers. By creating new housing, you're creating more jobs. That stimulates the economy. Okay. But then you're also looking here, and I think this would be the best part of your answer, is that he put a tax reform bill through Congress, or helped put a tax reform bill through Congress. And they're saying that put more money into the pockets of hardworking families, reduce the tax burden for small business, and promote job and economic growth. So policy making, what would be the policy? It's the tax reform bill. That's specifically what it's looking for, is how does endorsing him for Congress affect policy? Well, if you get the Republican in there that is being endorsed by the home builders, they build more homes, he gets this tax reform bill through, probably lowering taxes for those groups that are building these new homes. That's going to be the effect on the economy. I think there's another argument to be made, but right now I would not say that's not necessarily not important, but not the best argument. I think you could go down a path of what would happen if his opponents won, but that's not necessarily what I don't think it's the easiest or most direct answer. So for part A, you're looking at what's the action being taken? They're endorsing a candidate for office. How does that affect policymaking in Congress? Well, if they endorse this person for Congress and he gets elected, he's probably going to be sympathetic to the bills, the laws, the policies that are going to come in front of him and help them out. It's kind of that symbiotic relationship, to continually use that same word. So here's the hard part of these. Okay, even though they're only worth 3 points, remember, to get 3 out of 3 is really, really tough. Part C, I think, I think part C is a tough question. So part C says another group interested in conserving land. So that's the opposite of development. If I'm not building homes on this land, I'm conserving it for nature or animals, or not building on it. So that's your opposite. A group interested in conserving land supports the Democratic candidate in the election. Okay, so home builders support the Republican in this scenario. Land conservationists support the Democrat in this scenario. Rather than having 140,000 members, like the Home Builders Association, the group is led by a few very wealthy families. Okay, so this is just setting you up for your question. Explain how this difference will likely affect the conservationist group's strategy in the election. So what this is saying is, rather than having 140,000 people in my interest group, I have a few rich people. So how's that going to affect their strategy? Well, I think this question is asking you to pull back to last chapter when we look, or 2 chapters ago, when we look at PACs, super PACs. Okay. So this group right here, 140,000 members, that's quite a few. Those folks are probably not donating millions of dollars. They're probably donating a few hundred, $100, a few hundred, maybe $1,000 a piece to this organization in one factor or another. So automatically, the amount donated per person is going to be smaller. Fine. How is that going to affect their strategy? Well, look at this. This group was able to come out and make a direct endorsement of this candidate. They said, you should vote for this person. Okay, so that's probably going to have an impact. Okay, that's probably going to be a PAC, okay, a political action committee. They can directly endorse the candidate, but they're limited. They're limited on how much money they can collect. They're limited on what that money can be spent on. They're limited on kind of how they can approach the time frame. So if I were a few wealthy families in Part C, they're probably donating much higher amounts of money. And how is it going to affect their strategy? They might form a super PAC. They might form, they might use that super PAC so they can donate more money, but maybe they can't come out and directly endorse that candidate. They can support the candidate, but maybe it's going to limit on how they can give that candidate money, if they can give the candidate money at all. Maybe they run attack ads. Maybe they run an ad that says, hey, isn't it nice having clean air and animals and not another neighborhood blocking your view? It's going to, explain the difference, how this difference will affect their strategy in the election. Their strategy is not going to be as straightforward as the home builders. Home builders say, hey, vote for this guy helps us out. These few wealthy families might not be able to be as direct as the other group is, because of those campaign finance limits. So that's going to be a really tough one. And I would be surprised if anybody kind of dug that up on their own. Should we compare both group strategies in this question? I don't think that hurts. I don't think it hurts to compare it. I don't think you probably won't lose points because it's the only part of Part C. And remember, Part C is only worth 1 point. How will that difference affect their strategy in the election? you could come out with a couple sentences and say, few wealthy donors, probably higher donation amounts per family. They would have different limits on how they could donate to the campaign if they donate to the campaign at all, or they would form their own super PAC and be able to run. Maybe not, they're not running ads that are direct endorsement of a candidate, but they could, run ads that kind of, like what we saw before with the Swift boat veterans and gosh, I'm blanking on the other one. I showed you those two ads in class that really weren't directly candidate or direct ads from the candidate. Ashlyn, is this the actual chapter 15 FRQ? Yep. Yes, it is. So folks who have written it, if you are like, wow, I was way off, and you want to go back and take another stab at it, please do. Just to clarify, is the conservationist group? No. The conservationist group is the one supporting the Democrat. The National Association of Home Builders, that's the one up here. Okay, they're the ones that represent the construction industry. So they're not going to be one, the home construction industry doesn't want to save the birds and save their habitats. They want to build as many new houses as they possibly can. So those are going to be your opposite ends of this argument. You have the home builders that want to develop land and put as many homes out there as possible to stimulate the economy. The conservationists are like, no, don't build any more homes. Buy the homes that we already have. I don't want to have more development on that land. For Part B, the main idea about the tax reform bill or about how the representative will be sympathetic to the laws the group wants. I would say invert what your statement says, Rachel, that the representative would be sympathetic to the laws that the group wants. For example, this tax reform bill that would, allow them to do more development. So I see, because he was endorsed by them, he's going to probably want to listen to what they have to say, or he's going to be more sympathetic to their ideals. So 3 points. 1 point, describe the action being taken. They're directly endorsing a candidate for California's district election in 2018. How does it affect policymaking? By that direct endorsement of those members and getting those votes, he's going to be more sympathetic. An example that the tax reform bill that lowered the tax burden for working families and small businesses. Part C, you have the smaller group of people that have more money. How might they support the Democrat? How would that affect their strategy? Maybe they can't do a direct endorsement. Maybe they're going to form a super PAC and be able to run ads that kind of call into question that person. So again, you're looking kind of at the Citizens United argument. So any other questions there on the FRQ? So I'm going to stop sharing here. You're going to go back. So a couple things to think about for this week. Again, chapter 15, if you didn't get a chance to view the video notes for interest groups, those are posted on the remote learning page and on the announcements as well. There's a YouTube link. Go through it at your own pace. This is the FRQ for chapter 15. Kind of, if you would like to go back and take another stab at it, please do. Go back, make another revision. You're able to return this in as many times as you want. Please make sure you take into consideration those guided reading questions. You have unlimited retakes, unlimited time. Please take your time going through those. Tomorrow morning at 11, we'll be looking at chapter 16 notes, and that's going to be the media, and that's actually going to be the end of all new content. So we'll do the lecture notes for chapter 16, the media, tomorrow. And then on Friday at about this time, I think at 2 o'clock is what I have it scheduled, we'll go through the chapter 16 FRQ, which is the FRQ number 2 with the graph or chart, and you're going to be writing about that. We'll have more insight and more guidance on Friday from College Board to kind of see what your test, hopefully we'll know test dates and we'll know the test structure, whether it's 1 FRQ, 2 FRQs, things like that. Lilia, should we still be filling out the 1 pages for our binders? Yes, please do. You can kind of go through and follow along with the the notes that I've posted or the lectures online, that's the like main key ideas that would be helpful there. Kaylee, is the guided reading going to eventually be put in as an actual grade, or was it remain as participation? The guided reading questions will eventually go in as an actual grade. When we're told to do that, I'll let you know. But again, those are staying open at least for the next month or so. So you can kind of go back and take them over and over if you'd like. A couple other things about the argumentative essays. So I've gone through and I should have graded most of those submissions already. Um, Seeing a lot of really good, arguments there. A couple folks, if you don't get that thesis point, you can't. I think the max you can get is 1 out of 6. So I've made some comments on your submissions, especially the people that have good evidence, good reasoning, good alternative perspective, but their thesis statement's weak. I'm like, just go back and resubmit a new thesis statement. You didn't add that because statement. But overall, those have looked pretty great. And if you had any questions specifically about your submissions, shoot me an email. I can let you know. Carissa, is there a plan for finals at the end of this month? Not yet. When you know, when I know, I will let you know. I still believe that there's been some things at the district level, because it's not going to be just Legend High School. It's going to be all of Douglas County, if not the state, when it comes to what that would even begin to look like. Can we still retake Chapter 14 guided reading? You should be able to. If you can't, let me know and I should change that. Lily, I say we don't take finals. Who's to say these days? Who's to say? Let's see. Anything else that to kind of share? We've hit the bullet points. We've hit the Friday. We'll get more information. Tomorrow we'll look at 16. Friday we'll look at the 16 FRQ. What did I forget, Ewan? Oh, sorry, it went past you. Let's see here. In your personal opinion, do you think Governor Polis will require home learning for the rest of the semester? If so, how do you plan on studying for the AP exam for this class? Through Zoom or personal work and notes? Okay, there's a lot of questions there. So let's work from the bottom up there, Ewan. Our review guide for time for the AP exam will be done more than likely, until we're told otherwise, will be done remotely through Zoom. My plan is to kind of look at Monday with kind of like an overarching review of a particular unit. I'll give you some kind of, tiny breakout little discussion items, things to look at for that unit for the week. And then Friday kind of come back together. So kind of bookending the week with like a Tuesday unit review, and then a Friday, let's go back over those activities. What I'd like to do is on our block day times is do some individual class breakouts. But I'll come up with a schedule for that for next week. I just would like to get smaller groups and a little bit more time. How do you plan on studying for the AP exam? Again, it's going to be units 1 through 3, and it's going to only be FRQ. So once I know more what that looks like, I'll come up with a plan. And do I think Governor Polis will require home learning for the rest of the semester? I like to keep out hope. I like to keep out hope that something will happen and we can all kind of come back. But that kind of gets a little bit smaller every day. Guys, I don't know anything that I haven't told you already. I would say at this point we would probably want to plan that we will not be joining back together, and then if something happens, then we can be super happy for it. But I tend not to look. I'm going to keep, like I said before, we're going to look 1 week at a time. So for this week, we're definitely doing online, and we'll take an approach and see what next week holds. Any other questions for you guys? Okay, well, I'm going to pause recording.